Good afternoon, everyone, and I am Sharonda Brown from the Farm to Early Care and Education Initiative through our SEFS program at NC State, USDA, and also North Carolina A&T University. And I want to thank you all for switching your schedules this week for us and joining in at 2 o'clock. It's going to be well worth it. We have Charlotte Amons with us today, and she is going to give us a look at racial equity and food in the local food systems. So we are very excited to have her. She is with the Centers for Environmental for SEFS as well, just like I am, I'm sorry, and is a part of the core team, which is the Committee on Racial Equity. So she's been doing a lot of work before COVID, after COVID, during COVID, when it comes to racial equity. And we're very happy that we have her today. So please welcome Ms. Charlotte Ames.
Thank you so much. Yes, Sharonda, you work with SEFS too, right?
Yeah.
Hey, thank y'all for having me. I really appreciate it. I'm gonna try to share my slides here, and then we'll jump right into things. Let's see. We usually just simply like to start most of our presentations just as a means to kind of shift the culture of how we do things, because racial equity is about working on 3 different levels. We say a personal level, a cultural level, and an institutional level. So our work is around shifting culture. How do we create the culture we want to, because the culture is like the water that we swim in, the air we breathe. So how do we create the culture that we want to reflect? So let's get this party started. So we typically start with just a check-in, just to bring a level of humanity so that we're able to bring our whole selves to the work. We're not just, we're not just caregivers and teachers. We're also humans who live full lives. We're parents, we're partners, we're sisters, mothers, daughters, etc. So we like to bring a level of humanity by starting with just a how you doing kind of check-in question, just to create just as a new standard for how we gather and how we meet each other. It's an open invitation to bring our full selves to our work. So we start with a general check-in question. What's one thing you're loving about springtime and the shift in seasons? You can just type that in the chat box. That's just how we'll get started today. Our time together. Just anything that comes to mind, what you love about this time of year, the transition in seasons. Okay, a lot of flower people. Garden, the temperature. Yeah, I'm a warm weather person over a chilly weather. Colors, yes. Yeah, I'm getting busy in my garden now. It's doing things, it's responding. And I love the transition. I'm a part of a CSA, so I love the transition in my box to get, I'm looking forward to cucumbers and tomatoes in my first tomato sandwich of the season. So thank y'all for obliging me. But as we go through, we talk about racial equity. We don't want to make it seem like it's this far removed practice, but even just the shift in how we gather and meet, just something simple with just checking in on folks is a way to shift the culture of how we do things. So as we go through, I hope you see some of these as tools that you can use and take to your work. Yes, Matas, I see you. So I usually, in my presentations, like end with some sort of call to action, but I'm like, why don't we start with calls to action? Why don't we give places, for people to plug in off gate? So I also work with the Community Food Strategies team, and we work with councils, local food councils around the state. And this is a map of the 38 councils that we are engaged with in some form or another. And a majority of these councils are doing some sort of school or early child care related work when it comes to food and food systems. It could be as simple as a garden, or doing a tool share situation, a tool library, or it could even be like engaging in summer feeding programs for young people. So this is a resource for you to think through ways and places that you can plug in and work with other institutions and organizations that are doing food systems work in your area. Some of these are county-based and some of these are regional. So I'm gonna probably drop this presentation off to Sharonda when I'm done. So then if you're interested in finding out more about all of these, she can share that this map with you. And you can also, of course, hit me up anytime. I have my info at the end of this slide. So I want to present some framing to get us started. And I found this cute video, which, I mean, from the mouths of children, but this is a really good example of some of how we want to kind of shift framing. I'm going to let the video speak for itself. And then after the video, we can chat about it a little bit. So check this one out. And let me know if you have any problems hearing anything. It's all the way up.
Amelia, say mean things to this paper.
You're ugly. You don't have no friends. You're fat. That's why your mom didn't love you. You smell like dog food. You don't have no friends.
Okay. Now I want you both to apologize to this paper.
Sorry.
Okay. Is it fixed?
No.
Okay. So let's think about framing and think about what this video can kind of ways that this video might inform us. It seems like a very simple lesson, but let's think about this in terms of equity.
Amelia,
Yes.
say mean things.
How did this video relate to a charity center framing versus a justice center framing? And you can either unmute yourself and just give some initial reactions to this video and the point that the parent was trying to make, you think this parent was trying to make in this video. So anybody want to shout out anything? You can either put in the chat box or unmute yourself. I'm trying to open the chat box right now so I can see. Any thoughts?
This is Maria at Chapel Hill. I would say that, you know, say something nice is more the charity version here. And then when she crumples that paper up and opens it back up and says, is it better? And of course it's not, and they see that it's not. So then it doesn't help to just say, I'm sorry.
Right.
You have to think about how did you come at it from the front end? How can you know, you provide and do just instead of just charitable.
Exactly. Thank you so much. That was great. Tracy's saying in the chat box, words leave an impression that you can't completely erase. Exactly. And even though that apology was important, you know, we teach young people to apologize. If you make a mistake or you say something out of turn, you know, it's the right thing to do to offer an apology. But the point is, it's like intent versus impact. That apology doesn't necessarily make that person whole. It doesn't make that person who they were before. And I feel like that was the example with even uncrumbling the paper. You still see those dents and those scars and those from that verbal attack. So the question is, how do we make communities whole, you know, to be their full self? So exist in all of their fullness. So that's what we mean by a charity-centered framework versus a justice-centered framework in terms of how we do our work. So I just want to go through some characteristics of each and just kind of let you compare. And it's not saying that there's not a place for both, but it's like, how do we keep this framing in mind? So we talk about charity centers. It's often around an emergency response. We've seen that a lot around COVID or any kind of natural disaster. We see people come in, especially organizations come in with emergency response to fill real-time gaps, needful. If we look at a justice center response, we're looking at changing entire systems. If you think about that paper that the mom had as an entire system, we still see, even though with the intermediate responses, that it becomes somewhat whole, but it's not repaired, right? Charity assumes the need, you know, so you assume that this response is going to make things right. You assume this apology is going to make this this person whole again. But a justice-centered response lets the person who is impacted make that decision, not you. You don't get to assume the need. You go directly to the community to determine the need. Again, crisis response for charity. And justice frame is looking at repairing whole systems, reparative. Charity is often transactional, kind of, just as in we have this major catastrophe that's happened, we're going to go do this thing and we're out. We're going to do this thing to help and then we're out. Justice Center is about building relationships. We want to think about the long-term relationships, create those relationships so we can have sustainable long-term change. So again, room for both, they just have two different functions. Does anybody have any thoughts or questions about that before we move forward? And I'm sharing this when we talk about racial equity because then, well, I'll go to the next. I don't want to get ahead of myself, but this is kind of where I want to go next. And you've probably seen this image like 1,000 times. So let's talk about this image together. And I actually think this image is an awesome way to explain things to younger people, to teeny tinies. It's very accessible. And it's because of the image is cartoon-like, they can relate to it. And, you can have a real conversation about what the differences in the image on the left is versus the image on the right of your screen. So anybody want to shout out any differences you see in these two images? Open my chat box in case.
Yes, the fence is, you have to make the fence low enough so everyone can see over it.
Yes, ma'am. Who was that? I'm sorry, I didn't see.
Joey.
Thank you so much for that. The fence, everybody can't see over the fence. So either there's a problem with the fence or there's a problem with the way the boxes are distributed, right? So how do we make it so that everybody can see over the fence? And that's what we're doing with the picture, with the image on the right. We're making sure that everybody can see over the fence. Everybody has an opportunity, has access to the opportunity to see the game, to participate. We're not throwing little dude over the fence to give him any kind of extra advantage, right? So this is what I want to demonstrate in terms of just language and the differences between what some may say is diversity or inclusion versus equity, and then how equity relates to equality. So we often assume that equality means is the goal in terms of giving everybody the same thing, and so you're being fair in that way. No, we say equality is when everyone has what they need, and that may or may not be the same thing, right? So the fence, what if we remove the barrier altogether, like the lady just mentioned, or give the opportunity for the little guy to be able to have the same opportunity to see over the fence. And, so that's the difference in what we say is diversity, where we have the variety, which there's a purpose for all of these things. But diversity is just about, we often talk about who's at the table, so we can ensure that there are a diverse range of experiences at the table. But when we talk about equity, we want to shift power, So inclusion means that everybody has somewhat of a voice at that same table, Close that. Everyone has a voice. So everybody's represented. But then equity is that everyone has what they need to thrive. So everyone has what they need to see the game. We could even go further and talk about diversity. Baseball ain't everybody's jam. So what if we made the game where people have more options to choose what game they wanted to be a part of, But one of my mentors in this work, Maya Wiley, said this to me years and years ago in terms of how she defines equity, and it stuck with me forever. So she says, equity is the floor beneath which no one should fall. And we know there are cracks in that floor, but how can we work to help fill those gaps? If we be inclusive and including, thinking about diversity, inclusion, and equity, then we can make sure that all those gaps are filled. Does that sound all right? Cool. So I want to talk about the work that we do. As Sharonda mentioned, I'm a part of the CEFS crew too. I co-lead a team called CORE, which stands for Committee on Racial Equity in Food Systems. So I'm just gonna kind of relate all the language and framing to the work that we actually do every day. CORE stands for Committee on Racial Equity in Food Systems. Again, I'm also part of the Community Food Strategies team. CORE, we say, isn't an initiative. It's more about the principles of the work that we do in terms of these racial equity principles that we incorporate throughout all of our initiatives. So the vision for CORE is to really address root causes of systemic inequities in our food system. And this is how we do that. We manifest or actualize that vision by working to build a shared analysis. This is the concept, and a shared understanding of the role that institutions like ours have played on perpetuating structural inequities that historically existed and continue to exist. So how do we not repeat the same mess? How do we not swim in the same muddy waters in terms of culture? You know what I'm saying? So there's a few realities to keep in mind as we work together, as you work in community with other folks, that many of us, like myself, like Sharonda, are working within institutions that have historically perpetuated a lot of the racism, the structural racism that we now seek to shift. Think about education systems. Brown versus Board of Education was only, in the 1960s, it's not that far. When you think about it, it's not that far removed. Our health systems, we still see the residual effects of that in terms of access to, say, the vaccine, the COVID vaccine. There are reasons that the infrastructure doesn't already exist so people can easily access, or some communities have harder times accessing the vaccine than others, from mistrust to actual infrastructure. So understand the role that these institutions play, and the fact that many people who were directly impacted, or most directly impacted by the inequities that these institutions perpetuated, are now working within these institutions. So how do we elevate their leadership and their lived experience so that we can learn from it? And then as institutions that we work within, we shift that role that we typically play from gatekeeping, looking at that charity center versus justice center. We're no longer gatekeepers. We're now trailblazers. So we're opening, we're creating space, not just to take it up, but to make more space for other people and other institutions to be able to come in and do their work. So and then we address policies, practices, and procedures internally in order to do that better, right? And then this is our process. We build capacity. That's what institutions are really good for, building capacity. So we build capacity for frontline communities on the ground that are engaging in this work every day and that are living these realities every single day. We work from our strengths, asset-based approach, whole measures approach, systems thinking, systems working. Create a pipeline. We, as Sharonda mentioned, and Mia, we all work for the Center for Environmental Farming Systems, which involves two major institutions, among the highest employers, for one, in the state of North Carolina, two land-grant universities. So we get a lot of attention, we get a lot of looks from funders. Funders come to us. So how can we help build relationships to folks who are directly on the ground doing the work, to those funders? We don't have to necessarily always be a conduit or gateway to funding and resources. So, but we can also build, as we're doing that, we can be a gateway to those relationships so that we can eventually get out of the way of those relationships, and funding and resources and knowledge and experience can go directly to communities. Uplift the work that's going on the ground, magnify it so it can have a greater impact, scale up, facilitate leadership opportunities, and then work with BIPOC leadership within institutions to help build their leadership capacity. And then, center frontline communities, which includes youth, young people, the young people that you work with, never too young or never too late. Think about the parents who are also impacted. More than likely, if we have a young person, if we have a child that's food insecure, we can go back and we have a parent that's struggling also, not just with the economic impacts of food insecurity, but also with the emotional and psychological, impacts, the day-to-day struggle and stress of not being able to provide enough food for your family, and the embarrassment even. And then think about, especially in North Carolina and the South, the number of seniors who are now playing that role of taking care of their grandchildren, and often struggle with the debacle of having to purchase medicines over being able to purchase a healthy, nutritious meal, which often costs more for their families. So think about why communities are food insecure, and why young people often go hungry. So another tool, this is probably where we're gonna break out in some smaller discussion groups and kind of dig a little bit deeper. But we talk about in one of our agreements, we say we have to be accountable both to principles and people. So what are those principles that guide our work? And these are taking action for racial equity principles that we incorporate into our work. Shout out to DR Works, who mentored us through adopting these principles. So we're going to talk about these principles briefly, and then you're going to break out and see what that could look like in your everyday practice, in your work. So the first principle is work on all three levels. And when we talk about three levels, like I mentioned earlier, is the personal, the one-on-one, how we engage each other as human beings, the personal level, and the ways that racism is expressed personally. The second one is an institutional level, and that means policies, practices, and procedures within our organizations and institutions. How can we change those to make them more equitable and have more fair representation? And the final one is cultural. That would be our norms and belief systems, almost unspoken things, just how we show up at work every day, how we know how to inherently dress for our jobs, so all these unspoken practices that create the culture, and how all those things are interconnected. Culture invites certain behaviors, so personal actions and behaviors. So how can we, if we shift one, then we impact the other. The next one is organizing mind. How do we build out our circle of influence? How do we reach people that we may not normally be able to reach by just using basic organizing principles? Set explicit goals. That includes thinking about how certain communities are impacted on a very root level. So how is what we're doing, the goals that we're setting, the outcomes that we're creating, benefiting some and further oppressing other people? Hold and build power on the margins. Who's most directly impacted? And don't forget to think about the young people that you serve, because they are part of that impact. And I would say first and foremost. And then if you break that down even further, you see that young people of color are more disproportionately impacted across all systems. Again, be accountable to both principles and people. Know yourself. Take risks and be willing to learn from your mistakes. Be as transparent and accountable as possible. And then seek connection. So the principle that I really, really want to kind of zoom in on today is organizing mind. So we're going to talk about that one a little bit, and I'm going to, because I'm multitasking in the way that I do, I just kind of want to break down this principle specifically a little bit more and share just some background about this principle, organizing mind. Because I think if we start with this principle, then it helps impact and helps us expand and deepen through all the other ones. And I can share this entire resource with you. It's like each of these principles has more of a description and a little worksheet that you can work with. So I'll share that with Sharonda to share out with y'all if you're interested. And the principle of organizing mind is grounded in the wisdom of experienced and effective community organizers. To use organizing mind means that we begin by looking around to see who's with us. We don't start from the places that's far away. We start with who we can most directly impact. So who is with us? And then remember, justice-centered is relational. So we start building those relationships from there. So it comes from the principle of each one, teach one, and then we build out our circle of influence so we can impact more of our circle of concern. We use organizing mind and it helps us to focus on who and what is within our reach so we can build a larger group of people with whom to work and play and fight for justice with. So even these learning bursts, think about how you can use this principle of organizing mind to build out your circle of influence. Be strategic, use this platform in a strategic way so that it can build, benefit the wholeness of your work. Okay, so we're gonna do some breakouts in a second. Does anybody have any questions about any of these principles, particularly organizing mind? So I nailed it, what you're saying. I nailed it, right? Okay. Okay, so I want to demonstrate, as I mentioned, we also work with food councils around the state. So I want to demonstrate specifically, well, hold up. So again, this is just a quick review of organizing mind. Begin with those who share our vision, build out those relationships, each one teach one, right? This one makes it easier to remember. And then the ultimate goal of growing your circle of influence. I'm so proud of this slide. Y'all see that graph? Okay. I put a lot of work into that. So again, we work with community food strategies, which works with food, kind of is, to me, and the reason why I'm sharing this with y'all, because it kind of reminds me of the network that y'all share. So I want to talk specifically about ways that our team has said that we use this principle of organizing mind in our actual work. So again, it's not this far removed foreign concept. It's really just being intentional about the ways we use the principle every single day throughout our daily practice in our everyday work. So we're strategic about our networking. We're like y'all, we're spread out all over the state. And so we break up into regions, and people who, the team leaders have a specific relationship to that region or that work. And so we strategically network in that way, you know. So we have a puppy in the fight in that respect. We have multi-organizational, kind of like y'all, and multiracial teams, very intentional about that. So we could bring in a variety of lived experiences. And then we expand and incorporate our racial equity work into our home organizations. Again, many organizations come together to make the community food strategies team, but then we try to translate that work into our home organizations like CEFs or any of the other organizations or institutions that are represented on our team. And then we also, which I think is, it may feel counter to organizing mind, but when you think about it, it's an invitation. So we don't require people to come through and go to our racial equity trainings. It's not mandatory. It's an invitation. You know, so it creates more accountability if people come on their own volition and their own invitation, their own will, than if you're mandated to do it. So it's motivation for other folks to really work on their circle of influence as well. Okay, so you see how that's showing up, just in very simple, but I feel like very potent ways throughout our work. And we have a full list. We actually did this for every single one of those taking action principles. So that's gonna be some homework for y'all, potentially. So any questions about those before we invite you to break out and dig a little bit deeper within these principles a little bit? So what I'm going to ask you to do, and you won't have these principles in front of you when you break out, but maybe, let me see, I'm going to stop sharing right now. I'm going to see if I can at least drop them in the chat so you can have access to peep at them while you're in your breakouts. Does anybody have any questions before we go there though? Okay. So thank you for that. So this is what you're going to spend the next, I don't know, how long do we say? Like 20 minutes or so discussing in your small group. So we want you to look at that set of racial equity principles. There were 10 of them, all right? Let me try to escape and see if I can copy and paste them for you. So we want you to think about how you might possibly be using those principles in your work currently. and in very simple ways, not complex, nothing too deep, just in your daily work. How are you using each of those principles potentially? And then zoom in on organizing mind, especially while you're here together with your cohort. Think about how you can or could be using the principle of organizing mind, all right? And then just jot down, somebody just have a note taker in your group and jot down ways that that could show up. And then think about how you could take it to your home organization. And also then talk about what challenges that might come up so you can be prepared. Begin with the end in mind, you know. So think about any kind of challenges that might come up. How's that feel? I'm going to try to drop these. All right, I just dropped them all in the chat box. Remember, you're going to focus on organizing mind. Think about how you currently use it in your work, any of these principles in your work, right? And then zoom in on organizing mind. And then talk about any challenges that either that you're currently having or that you can foresee in doing the work. Okay, because the work is the work, right? Any questions before we break out? All right, so just keep in mind that you want to take a couple notes because it'd be cool to just have a quick debrief and talk through it when you get back in the large group. So I'm gonna pass it on to Sharonda, and I'm gonna say thank you because I have to jump on another call because I overbooked myself today. But thank y'all for the opportunity, and hopefully, Sharonda, if you want me to come back, we can do a follow-up session too.
Okay, and the group that I have, they will definitely let me know. So I thank you again for giving
Thank
us
you.
your time today and starting us on this journey. We have 2 more racial equity sessions that we'll be doing in the next 2 weeks. So thank you again for getting us started. And with that, we're gonna turn it over to Mia to break you guys out into sessions, for the breakout session, and then we will come back after and just debrief.
All right, here we go, everybody. And just as a reminder, if you have any problems getting into your breakout rooms, at the navigation bar on the bottom of your screen, you should see a little icon that says breakouts. If you click that, you should be able to accept your invitation to join. And feel free to unmute if you have any questions.
Tracy, Patty, are you 2 there?
Patty and Tracy, feel free to unmute if you need any assistance getting into your breakout rooms. Thanks.
I'm sorry, I realized you didn't hear me. I said thank you. Sorry. Okay, let's exit to this. Are we all back?
And 2 more seconds.
Okay.
I think I left inadvertently before I meant to.
It's
Right,
okay.
everybody
Maria.
should be back.
It is all right. All right. Well, as we know, Charlotte had to leave due to a prior engagement. However, this is the question coming back from your breakouts, and just wanted to debrief on that. So Caroline and I are here. And we just want you to share from your discussion at least one way you're using the taking action principles and one challenge.
I'll start first. I'll be the
Thank
first one
you,
out the
because
gate.
I'm the one that, I will call on people like the teachers used to do in the old days. So thank you so much for that. I appreciate it.
You are welcome. You are welcome. I'm Lakeisha out of New Hanover County. And there was just a small group of us. And one of the challenges that we talked about, like Karen was saying, in Durham County, without having that connection with parents like you usually do, it creates a challenge there for family engagement, because they're not coming into the centers like they were before. So we talked about how, sharing recipes from home was a really good idea. And I shared that I've got a childcare site I've worked with in the past. What they do is they collect recipes sometimes from all the families. Families write down on an index card or something, and then they gather them together and make almost like a cookbook that they distribute to all the families. And so there's a little bit of everything from all their families. So that way children are able to introduce something from home to share with everyone else. It involves a little bit of diversity in these different cultures. And it's a great way to have a little bit of family involvement or family engagement when we can't do it like we normally would so much. So that was our takeaway that I wanted to share.
Love it. Love it. Thank you so much for sharing. Which group were you in? Which group number?
I think we were room number 3.
I think you're right.
Okay. Matt, were you going to add to that?
Miss Karen also shared, I thought it was a cool idea to be able to take some of the recipes and things that maybe her families provide and incorporate some of those things into her menu at the childcare site in order to bring different cultures into her program. So I thought that was a really great idea as well.
Cool. Sounds wonderful. What about my other groups?
Group 1, since we do not want to be called out, because I know someone will call me out, right?
Oh, hi,
So group,
Cynthia.
hi. I was not going to let you call me out. So I don't have my glasses on, but I see. The connection was similar to the first person that came on. But in the difference in collecting the recipes, what I actually did was for 1 week, we had the families before the virus to come in and actually make their child's favorite meal here. I provided all the items, and we just had like a family. We did it once for breakfast, lunch, and snack. And they came in, and then we all just prepared the meal together. Got a little busy because my space isn't that big. Not sure if I'm gonna do that again. But everyone had a great time.
That was good. I love that, especially
Oh,
during the
thank you.
time of COVID. That's good. That's good.
I didn't want you to call me out, friend.
Oh, because I would.
I know.
Oh, and the backstory here, everybody. Cynthia and I used to work together as director and assistant director at a child care center in Durham. So, and the funny thing is, we actually have one of our parents on this call as well. So it's a small world in early childhood, you know, but we make big changes. So that's what it's all about. Do I have another group that's willing? What group were you, Cynthia? We had 3, and who were you? I'm sorry, what? You're muted. 1, okay. So we need 2. And I think, how many groups did we have, Mia? About 4 of them?
Yeah, we had 4 groups total. So group 2 was
Two.
Joanne, Lynn, Michelle, Natalie, and Tracy. And group 4 was Barbara, Carmen, Dion, and Maria.
All right.
Hey, this is Natalie. I was in group 2. So we didn't talk about any specific strategies like the cookbook. We were kind of talking more generalized in trying to do the work. And the providers in my group kind of felt like it's something they weave throughout their day-to-day work with the kids in just sort of working on building community within their classrooms, and just always trying to find ways for the children to work together, appreciate each other, celebrate each other. And so beyond that, we were just trying to wrap our head around all the different principles that she introduced in the first part of the training. And so we were talking about each of those and trying to grasp that, because it was such great information. So we were kind of dissecting the organizing mind principle and what that kind of meant to us, and how we could expand our circle of influence beyond the classroom. But they were sort of concentrating on focusing on what they could do with their kids in the classroom.
Okay, I love the way you just phrased that, your circle of influence outside of the classroom. I love that. And that's what this is about. Getting out, like you said, and doing those collaborations. Love it. All right, our final group. Number 4.
Hi.
Hey, Maria.
Hey, actually, Dion's going to talk.
Okay.
He just unmuted. I was going to give her a second to see if she would be the one. We didn't really pick a presenter.
Yeah, we kind of were, we're more so focused on the actual concept of the difference between inclusion and diversity and equity. We talked a lot about thinking that those things or those terms were very similar when they were actually very different. We talked a lot about that. We talked about how to build bridges and opportunities for collaborations and things like that by just generally building relationships. It's hard to do anything without first gauging some type of similarity or some type of commonality between the people that you serve, whether it's your staff, your students, your parents. We talked a lot about that in regard to making sure that we, provide opportunities for staff, teachers, and students to build those relationships, to be able to be comfortable to come out of, feeling like they were on the periphery, but more so they were included in the decision-making process. So I think I summed that up as best I could.
Wonderful. Wonderful. That's what all this is about, looking and diving a little deeper into these different principles and figuring out how we can put them into action. So I commend you all and thank you all for that today. And just because it's back to Caroline and myself, I just wanted to open it up to you, Caroline, if you had any last thoughts, and we're all also open for questions right now too, everyone.
Yeah, does anybody have any last questions? Maria, I know you have wanted to share.
So I was late to the meeting because I thought we was at 12 this morning. And then like 2 to 2:30 is pre-K dismissal time. So are all these meetings gonna keep being at 2 to 3?
No, this one, because of the presenter, it was moved from 2 to 3. The other ones that we have will be back at 12 o'clock. So next week, next week and the week after, I will be doing 2 more. One looking at racial equity through the eyes of a child. And then after that, the theory of change, how we put everything into place, but they will both be at 12 o'clock.
Okay, and really fast, I don't know if I really missed the topic because I have a child and she really thinks like that children with like black skin and dark skin, she'll say they look weird, okay? And we read a book called Chocolate Me. Have anyone ever heard of that?
I don't think so. I'm gonna write that one down.
Yeah, it's called Chocolate Me. That's like a really good one. It's by Tay Diggs, Tayediggs. I just thought that was a good book, so I just wanted to give that to everyone.
Yes, thank you. That's what this is about. That's what this forum is about. Helping everybody out.
Will you tell us a little bit more about the book and why it was helpful?
So basically, of course it's the black little boy, and he's saying like he don't like his skin because it's so dark, and his hair and the way like his friends treat him. So it's like he have different Cajun, different background of friends, like, you know, white, Hispanic, and stuff like that. And it's basically, you know, just because you're different complexion don't mean nothing is wrong with you. You know, you still have to love yourself.
Love that. Love that.
Thank you for sharing that.
And coming up to kind of go along with that, in one of our next week, when we do talk about not theories, but through the eyes of a child, we'll be looking at windows and mirrors, which is a big piece of what you kind of described with Tay Diggs doing that book. And, you know, actually having pieces of literature within your classrooms so that it stimulates the children that are there, that when they actually look in that book, they're looking at themselves and they see themselves and feel empowered by that, you know, because that's a big piece socially and emotionally, like you're saying, because if you didn't take that step to help that child, you have to think about that child repressing themselves and how they feel. And that's not what we want for our children. We want them to feel proud in the skin that they're in, no matter what color it is, and just be successful in life, so socially and emotionally. So thank you for that. And we'll also talk a little bit more about how to pick that literature like you did, so that you guys can start building a sort of a library for yourselves also. Okay.
I think we have another
one I just pulled off my shelf. Happy in Our Skin, which is a good one by Fran Manushkin.
Happy in Our Skin. Okay.
Happy in Our Skin. You can get it through Scholastic, but it's really nice, and it's got all kinds of children and talking about how they're all different.
Maria, can you give me the author again?
It's Fran Manushkin. I'll put it in the chat.
Okay.
Spell it.
Thank you for that.
I appreciate all the actual, like, the real life examples of how to take this into the classroom and into the community and with parents, because I feel like that's the hardest part, is to really, like, you know, how do we take all this abstract, you know, ideas and culture shifts and actually put it into place? So that was really helpful and interesting for me today.
Yeah, and for me as well, because that's the thing, we can get all of this information, gather all the data, but how are we using it? How are we putting it back out there to make a purpose? And these are some really good ideas that you all have been talking about and have been, you know, doing. You're on the ground, you are out there and you are doing this every day, and we appreciate you for every bit of it, from the Farm to ECE team. So yeah. Well, I am sorry, we are over. We are at 3:01, and I am trying to be respectful of your time. Again, we will be back next week at 12 o'clock. I will present Through the Eyes of a Child. And if you have any questions or anything else, please let us know, but also feel free to bring more examples like you did so we can gather it up and we can have a toolkit for our Farm to EC racial equity piece, because this is wonderful and this is what I love. So thank you again. If there are no more questions, I hope everyone has a great day and that you get rain for your gardens, and tomorrow is just another beautiful day for everyone. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Sharonda. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.